computer. Okay, good morning, guys. Happy 24th of October. So today our topic is social media marketing for entrepreneurs. I guess social media is one of the best platforms, not just for startups, but generally all businesses out there, right? Especially if they're targeting consumers. But for some of you who I know are doing B2B business, social media can be useful as well. I give you an example. Social media can be a good way to sort of establish authority. I'll share afterwards how you can do that. And also social media is a good way for you to find recruits, right? You can get to hire people as well using social media. All right, Amalina just shared the slides today. You can get it on the chat room. All right. So today we're going to cover 5 sections. So as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot to cover today compared to previous weeks, but I think it should be light and fun. So number 1, we'll look at why do we need to use social media. That's our introduction. Then we will look at building awareness, setting goals, developing your voice, selecting and launching platforms. As we know, there are a lot of platforms on social media, from TikTok to Snapchat to Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. So how do we select which platform we should use for our business? Thirdly, we look at how do we win customers. It's one thing to create awareness. It's another thing to actually convert those awareness into paying customers, right? So we look at content strategy for that. We look at how do we write and what kind of visuals we should use for our social media. Fourth, we look at how do we retain and keep those customers. We need to manage our account. As we know, setting up is easy, but maintaining it consistently week in and a day in and day out is not as simple, right? So we'll share how you can do that and how can you measure success. Because if you don't measure, how do you know whether it works or it doesn't work, right? And then we'll share some final thoughts, some tools and tips. All right, guys. Okay, so we'll go to introduction first. As usual, right, if you have any question, please put them on the chat group and we'll try to respond at each section of the webinar. So why use social media, right? It is a good question. Many people think that it is a default thing. We go in because everybody has social media, but we have to have a very good reason to help us to understand what we need to do in order to achieve our goals, right? Right, don't know why. All right, so here we have a funny memes where people looking at other people who has social media strategy, right? And others that are winging it as they go. So in today's chapter, we'll look at the 3 stages of social media marketing as mentioned in the outline. We'll look at how do we create awareness, right? And next, how do we convert those people that are aware of our business and convert them into customers? And thirdly, how do we retain them? How do we continue to engage them, get them to participate on activities related to our brands and also keep buying our products? So we'll look at setting the objective, measuring the objective, and continuously refining our objectives. So why use social media? I think for many of you, because you come from the at least millennials or the Gen Zs, right, or Zennials they call it, social media is sort of like, I think it's your playground, right? We know that everybody's on social media, and if you want to reach customer and if you want to reach people 24/7, social media is the place to be, right? If you look at the forecast here, these are in the billions. So it would forecast that by 2021, 3 billion people, more than 3 billion people will be on social media. As we know now, Facebook alone has over 2 billion people. So if you're not on social media, you basically, anonymous, right? So we'll look at some examples how brands and other Livewire winners and Share Livewire themselves have been using social media to promote their business. So you have that on the right-hand side, right? Let's look at some good reasons and some also not so good reasons to use social media. Number 1, good reason is you are able to communicate to your customers. You are able to raise awareness on your brands. You get to learn more about the market. Social media is not just a broadcast medium. It's also a medium where you can listen, right? Later we'll share what the social listening means, right? You can establish yourself as an authority, as I mentioned, in the industry that you are in. Obviously, when customers want to choose product, they want to choose product that are, I think, offer them the best value, right? So some of the value may come from understanding and appreciating that you have the expertise in what it is that you do, you have some experience in what it is that you do, and you are aware of the latest trends in the market, right? I think another good reason is if your competitors are there, you don't want to not be there, right? So you want to be join in the conversation, make sure that you are part of the conversation, right? As I mentioned about conversation, the next point is about joining the conversation about your product. It is very good. For example, if you're on Instagram or if you're in Twitter, right, there's discussion on topics such as maybe on health or environment. If your business is related to that, you can join in the conversation by using the relevant handles or hashtags, right? And lastly, compared to other mediums like TV, radio, and even paid digital ads, social media is free to low cost, right? There can be some cost to it if you start buying ads or you start hiring designers and writers. And let me just, I guess, mute some of the friends. All right, so we continue. Here are some good reasons not to use it if none of your customers are using it, because social media, while it's free or low cost, it does involve you investing your time. So if your customers are not there, for example, your customers are say 65-year-old or senior citizens, right? Maybe Facebook is relevant to them because I think that's where all our parents and grandparents are. But maybe maybe TikTok is not the best medium for you to communicate if you are targeting elderly citizens, right? Next, you know that you will not have time or interest to adequately manage the community or post content, meaning that don't set up something and then not manage it, not maintain it, because it is, I think, give a quite poor impression. People might be wondering, does the business still exist? Because last post was in 2018, right? So understand that once you go into social media, you're able to commit adequate time to manage your content, right? To respond. Imagine if somebody is asking you a question, like, are you open tomorrow? And then you wait for like next week to reply, right? So maybe the interest is no longer there and they might already switch to your competitors, right? Or the last reason is just because you think you should, right? I think that's not the good reason. I think it's best to look on the left-hand side and recognize, are these the reasons that you should be on social media? And these are obviously the better reasons that you should consider using social media. All right, so that's the first part. So maybe we can take up some questions, or we can move along to building awareness. Any questions on social media? Are your business already on social media, or not yet on social media? Why haven't you gone on social media? And you have, what are the things that maybe you want to share, or something that you want to take a bit of a nudge? I have some experience on social media by virtue that when I was working for advertising firm last time, I was the digital lead for brands. I don't know whether I can mention brands because it's a shell program, but I was also a digital marketing manager at one time for a 5-star hotel. All right, so Nisha is sharing here that yes, she's both on Instagram and Facebook only. I think for the younger generation, maybe not my generation exactly, I do notice that you like all this TikTok, right? Maybe it is something that's not permanent. It's fun, right? It's candid. It's maybe a bit more capricious or spontaneous, right? So some things to consider depending on your customer base, right? I think if you're selling, hi Iju, waving back at you. Iju is one of our Shell FYI winners. We invited them to join the classes as well, right? So moving forward, maybe we'll have some session with the alumni. All right, Jensen from Shell is asking a very good question. How do we know that social media works for the business? I think the key thing is to understand who your audience are. I think if your audience are on social media, or if they are B2B, they are on LinkedIn perhaps, then I think it's something that is relevant to them. I think relevancy is one thing where you know that it is relevant, it works for your business. Secondly, one way to measure is to see whether there are engagements on your post. So I think that's one thing to post, but if no one is viewing it, no one is sharing it, no one is saying something about it, then that may be a signal or indicator for you to to maybe change or explore other means of how do you engage, how you engage with your customer. All right. Thanks for that, Jay. All right, let's move on to building awareness. Because before you can get customer, people need to be aware of you. One of the famous saying that I like, right, is by this famous advertising man called Bill Bernbach. He said that if a ship passed by in the night, like everybody's sleeping, did the ship pass by, right? I think there's another saying, I think not of advertising, but I think it's just a proverb or something. If a tree falls in the forest, there's a tree fall in the forest, right? So I think a key thing is to be able to be in front of the eyeballs or in front of the presence of your customer and make sure that they are aware of your business, or at least people around them. They might not be your customer, but the key thing here is to build awareness as much as possible to those that are aware or are associated or affiliated to people that you want to be aware about your business, right? So, all right. So key thing here is to set your social media goals, right? Before you even progress to getting people to be aware of your business, you need to ask, what are my goals, right? Am my goals to reach a younger group, or am I targeting coffee aficionados, or am I targeting fashion enthusiasts, or wannabe influencers, right? So you want to make sure, I think this is leading to Jay's question as well. Number one is, are your goals relevant to your business, right? For me, marketing goals should always align to ultimately what does your business want, right? So your business objective could be, I want to generate #1 million revenue, right? So in order to reach #1 million in revenue, understanding what are the average purchase or basket size of your customer buying, then you can answer the question, how many people do I need to make aware of my product? And from there, what is the conversion rate that I have that can lead to me achieving that #1 million sales, right? I'll repeat that because it's very important. Look back at what your business goals are. It's very important for businesses to have goals rather than responding or being reactive to the market. Say if your goal is #1 million, then you look at your product price, you look at the average basket, and then you look at how many people do you think you need to convert from the more larger universe of awareness that you are able to convert into that #1 million. So say if you need to close, your conversion rate is 1%, then maybe you need to reach at least 10,000 people if you want to get the amount that you're targeting, right? And number two, how is this useful? How is it useful to your customer, right? How will this make them make more informed decisions? So this is where you revisit your value proposition that we discussed in earlier webinars and help them to see that your value, what your value propositions are, and how does it relate to their pain, gains, and jobs that they need to get done. So, for example, it can be location, right? Or it can be if they're busy and they have meetings and all that. So your food product or drink product maybe has delivery services. So it will help them to see and make it easier for them to choose you over your competitors, right? Number three, can you measure these goals, right? With Facebook, with Instagram, and with many of the social media platforms, this can be done quite easily, right? There are the analytics section where you can see the level of engagements, whether your followers are increasing, whether there are more negative or positive feedback. That's something that you're not able to do with the free tools, but I think you can monitor it nonetheless using social listening, right? But I think there are paid tools which actually can aggregate and organize your data into what are positive feedbacks and what are negative feedbacks. At the last part of today's lecture, we'll look at some of those tools, right? And lastly, are your goals realistic, right? Understand what are the constraints. Are you able to post once every day? Are you able to post once every week? Or is it worth it to do it if you're just going to post one post a month, right? So these are some of the questions that you may want to ask yourself, right? But if you're a B2B business, maybe it is not that critical for you to continuously update people every day, right? Maybe if you're a more fast-moving consumer goods or consumer-facing, then the amount of posts may be a little bit more frequent, all right? Okay, so setting your goals is very important. So these are some example. So your business objective may be increasing your brand equity, right? How famous your brands are. So the goal for social media is to use social media to grow awareness. So the more people are aware of you, the more well-known your brand are. So you can measure this by the number of followers or the number of reach, right? That's a sample metrics or sample ways of you can measure your performance, right? Next, you want to develop a loyal customer base. So this is where you see the level of engagement, how frequent are people engaging with your brand on your Instagram page or your Facebook page or your TikTok pages, right? Then you can see this from comments, likes, and mention, right? There can be a sample metric. Next is to look at increased sales and leads. This is actually one of my favorite metrics, because you can actually measure from social media how many click-through from your Facebook, from your Instagram, that leads to your website, that leads to people making a purchase if you're doing an e-commerce business. Another example, if you have a landing page on your website and there's a form, right? From the social media post that you did, how many people went to the landing page and actually submitted an inquiry about your product, or signing up for your newsletter is another good way of measuring how your social media activities have helped to generate leads. All right. So engagement includes shares, likes, comments, and other interactions for a business social media efforts, right? Okay. So next, it's not enough just to post something. You have to know what is the voice of your brand, right? If you're like Iju, for example, he's selling milkshake targeting younger generation, then obviously he don't want to sound too business-like, right? He doesn't want to sound like maybe using jargons that are not relevant to the youth. He would probably choose jargons that are relevant to them, right? So who is going to be behind your social media account? So some of the key here is to separate your brand from your personal brand. I think this is actually a good practice, because as a business, you may not want to be in front all of the time. You can have a personal brand page for yourself individually, but you may eventually get partners in or sell your business. Then it's good to separate that, so it's easier for you to sort of like show that the brand is a separate entity, right? Next, you need to be authentic. I mentioned about the voice that you have, but at the same time, be professional, right? You should not be like complaining or ranting about other brands and all that, or responding to things that are not relevant to the story of your product, right? I think some best practice is if you have comments and all that, try your best to engage with every single one of them. I think a very popular personality that advocates this is Gary Vaynerchuk. He's quite popular in asking people to post like a lot of times each day and to respond to each and every comment and emails or whatever it is that people are communicating with your brand, right? Fourth is to provide content that is of value. Think of yourself. Is this relevant? How does this help my customer learn about my product or love my product more, right? Avoid subjects that might be controversial among your audience. So this is very good as well. I think just as a general rule, try to avoid political messaging, although some brands have done it very well lately. I think one of them very popularly is Nike, right? With the Black Lives Matter. So I think they did it well, but I think be very, very careful, right? If you're not sure, I may even suggest for you to hold back, right? Okay. And another thing to note with this slide is you don't want to be all over the place as well. Remember, I think try to have a nice ratio of your content. It's not so much on thematic, like just about Raya or Christmas or Chinese New Year, right? I think from time to time, you need to tell people what business you are in and how does this help them, okay? All right, fantastic. So choosing what platform is right for you, there's a lot of platforms out there. I think you are all very familiar with this, but we'll expand on it, right? When choosing your platform, as mentioned, consider your market, consider your goals, consider the sector that you are in. I mentioned a lot about B2C and B2B, because a lot of businesses in B2B are often wondering, how is this relevant to me? It is relevant because people are searching information online more than ever. If I give you an example, when I was in the hotel industry, right, in order for people to make a decision on where to travel and what hotel to choose when they're traveling, right, they're actually going through, like, at that time, about 17 different touch points, meaning they're going to blogs, they're going to online trip advisors, they're going to social media, they're going to websites. So you want to be there when people are making consideration, right? And thirdly is to consider your capacity, right? Are you able to commit? I think that's very important. And also consider the quality of your writing, of your design, of your photography as well. Because sometimes your product is beautiful, but posting something that's not so nice online can do a disservice to it, especially if it's coming from your official brand social media platforms or pages, right? So, okay, this is another use of social media that is not so common, I think, with many new entrepreneurs. I think they are okay with posting something, with promoting something, but they're not using another function of social media. The word social itself means that you're able to listen to other conversations, and even your competitors, right? So look out for what's trending. I always make it a habit to check Google Trends from time to time, to check Twitter, what are the conversations are about, right? I can say one thing, observing from the past year or so, in Malaysia, there's a lot of discussions about Korean artists, right? I'm quite surprised, right? I don't see that many conversation on local artists, right? So social listening is a key takeaway. One of the key takeaway that I want you to take back from today's session. It is a process of monitoring online conversation to understand what customers are saying about your brand and in the industry as a whole, right? So people are social creatures. So normally there are such thing what we call as zeitgeist, which is the spirit of the moment. So you want to know what is it that people are talking about, right? What may be cool to you when you were in high school may not be cool to the kids today, right? In a nutshell. All right. So consider your market. WhatsApp as well. There's a lot of people converting to WhatsApp business now. There are bots that you can use as well on some platforms like Facebook and WhatsApp. So these are some of the things that you can consider. How are your customers consuming it? What do they like to see? What trends in your country, in Malaysia, for example, or in Sarawak, more specifically, that are happening? And look at how you can be part of the conversation. I think being part of a conversation is another thing that is quite critical. You can start a conversation as well. There are many influencers that are able to sort of put up something and it becomes something that is trending or viral even, right? But if you are not able to do that all the time, then what you can do is to join the conversation that's happening. You see some brands like Nando's, for example, they're quite fast in responding to things and does it in a humorous way. So that goes back to the tone of voice, right? Developing your voice. So we're going to run very quickly to three main platforms on social media. Number one is Facebook. Facebook, as I mentioned earlier, has over 2 billion followers, users, sorry. They have broad range of users, all the way from school kids to elderly citizens, right? And the advertising platform, the Facebook for Business, is very good in terms of targeting. You can actually set up the age, the gender, the location, the interest, and do a very targeted advertising if you're using Facebook. But of course, there is a paid service, right? I think with Facebook, it is difficult to grow organically without paid promotion. I think it is a business at the end of the day. I think they've designed the algorithm such that you can only reach people that are close to you or what the algorithm think is relevant to you. But if you want to reach a wider audience, if you're starting a business, but maybe individually you do not have such a wide following, then it can be very difficult, right? And next, because everybody's on Facebook, it's highly competitive. So that's something to consider. It is, if you look at Blue Ocean, it is somewhat of a red ocean, Facebook, and it requires a lot of visual content. Especially these days, you see people going for videos because there's so many other contents competing for your attention on top of their own network of family and friends. So Facebook now is becoming more and more of a visual content. People are expecting video if you want to get more attention on Facebook. Next is Twitter. Twitter does not have as many followers, but Twitter is something that people use to get updated to the latest information. It's useful for B2B business, and it's useful for you to get some thought leadership, and also raising awareness on Twitter, right? And the challenge is it doesn't have so much engagement because people don't interact with Twitter as like how they react with interact with Facebook, and it may be less relevant in some countries or market. I think for the youth, I think with Twitter, right? Twitter, I think if you look at the people that uses Twitter, they are a little bit more thinking. If you look at some feedbacks on Twitter, for example, they're a little bit more intellectual, I see, compared to Facebook. Sometimes Facebook is full of people who just like to troll people or just like to fight, right? Twitter is a little bit more sensible, I think. I can be wrong. If you think I'm wrong, I'd be happy to hear your feedback on the chat, right? Thirdly, Instagram is one of my favorite. There's not so much words. TLDR, too long, don't read, right? So Twitter is great for people to communicate because it's visual. You can put your logos, you can express yourself with photos, right? It's designed for mobile experiences, so it's designed for smartphones. It is where most people consume social media, so it's a good place to be. High engagement, people do comment and reshare posts, and you can get followers quite fast compared to Facebook and even Twitter on Instagram. The cons is that you have to use high quality images. Again, is something that you need to consider. Content limitation, you can't click on anything. So if on Instagram, normally people say, click on the bio if you want to get to so-and-so link, right? And it also has a limited audience. If you're targeting more senior audience, they may not be there. More business audience, they may not be there as well. All right. Next, then there are other platforms like LinkedIn, right? Good for business B2B marketing, mostly in English language. Language is also something to consider as well, right? If your consumer, for example, speaks Mandarin primarily, there's nothing wrong with posting it on Mandarin. At the end of the day, it is not, it is marketing, right? You want to reach your audience, right? If they can read Mandarin, of course. Pinterest, not so popular, but they're quite popular among female, maybe popular on if you're selling crafts and such, right? YouTube is another channel, good for content, but normally used to supplement other channels like Facebook, for example, right? And then, as I keep mentioning today, something I think exciting in the space of social media, Snapchat and TikTok, right? Or TikTok specifically, popular with the younger demographic, good for creative and cutting-edge content, currently better for personal use and than small businesses, but I think that is changing, right? So there are many other platforms out there. I think even in countries, and specific countries like China or Brazil, right? They do use some social media platforms more than what we commonly use here, right? I think in the past there have been some Malaysians who tried to develop their own social media, but it just didn't take off. All right. So I'm not going to run too deep on this, but remember when you're creating your profile for your social media pages, it is a business profile. So think of how best to write a profile that is relevant and give information that excites your customer, right? Next, look at your profile, make sure that your logo, if you're putting your logo, appears in full, or if a picture, it doesn't crop in an awkward manner, right? Create a business account, not a personal account. This is very important. I think it just undo a lot of hard work when you realize this and had to change later on. So save yourself the trouble and create a business account from the start. Okay, so who should you follow? So other than following people themselves, you can explore hashtags and see who are popular in certain hashtags, and maybe that can help you to establish your authority or thought leadership. And you can use features like lists, and I think more and more social media allows you to sort of like follow hashtags, or even besides following users, and even organizing brands that you are following into clusters, right? Okay, if you already have a social media platform, then this is an opportunity for you to look back and ask questions. This is what we call an audit, social media audit. So look at who is following you, right? Are they relevant to your audience? If you're targeting more professional businesses, but a lot of the people that are following you are like ravers, you know, they may not be relevant to your brand, right? But if you are like looking for a more sort of trendy young people, but those that are following you are maybe not trendy and cool, then maybe you have to ask yourself as well, why is that, right? Next, okay, I think you can look externally as well, whether your customers are still there or are they shifting to other platforms. Look at what worked and what hasn't worked. This is quite easy actually. You can just go to your Facebook analytics or Instagram analytics and just see what post has the most engagement, right? And what posts maybe have less engagement. From there, you can decide and plan what kind of content you want to produce or generate, right? And then another way of auditing is to benchmark. Then you compare your account against your competitors. This is always very good, right? As a business, I can't emphasize this enough. Recognize that you have competitors. We don't want to be sort of like thinking so highly of ourselves, but not sort of standing on firm ground, right? So always look at your competitors. Always, I think, stay humble and learn, right? Basically, fifth. Is this, going back to our first slide on the business goals, does this account and my social media pages helping me achieve my business goals, right? So an audit is a step-by-step process where you evaluate and help you optimize your social media strategy and content and tactics, right? All right, so let's take up some questions before we move on to winning customers, or maybe you need to take some time to digest some of the information. Let me see some questions, right? All right, Narizam. Okay, Narizam is asking that I share my artwork and people like it. If people like it, does it mean it features appropriate and useful for most people? I think it depends. You have to see who are liking it, how many people are liking it. But if it translates in better sales for that product, then I think it gives you a more fuller picture of whether that helps, right? But that's not wrong there, Narizam. You can use actually social media to ask people, do they like it or not like it, right? I mentioned about Emily in Paris last week, right? She's a social media manager in that show. So she herself does ask a lot of questions to consumer to get feedback on the brand. So I think if you mean to do that, you can experiment with that. There's no one straight answer, right? Unless you have a really wide followers, there's like 1,000 people who say like, I love it, I want to buy that, where can I order? Then maybe that will give you a clearer picture, right? Zikiang Te is asking, is LinkedIn popular in Malaysia? It is, but to be frank, it is more popular among maybe people that are more professionally focused, people who are very, I think, deep into the type of businesses that they are doing. It is very relevant. I do notice people that I think LinkedIn is their primary social media page, right? And it's good for large companies as well, multinationals and all that, to engage people, right? Because sometimes you want to keep the discussion in the right setting. So if you consider the office or the meeting room or a boardroom, then LinkedIn is that, right? Okay, question that is asked privately, but I won't mention the name because the person sent me privately. If you're setting up a digital marketplace for seafood on Facebook, how do we stand out from competitor? And would it be wise to start using Instagram for it? I think it depends on people that are buying seafood, right? Instagram, if you're looking for a younger group to buy your seafood, yes, I would say go for it. But if you're looking for a wider audience, then Facebook is a good place to start, right? Because Facebook is broad. I think once you establish on, then you sort of can see where you want to move your discussions, right? But there are a lot more to digital marketing. Today we're discussing social media, but another way of marketing is you can also use search engine marketing, where where you leverage on search engine that is very popular, like Google, right? I think that is quite powerful. Google is very, very powerful, but it doesn't fall under social media marketing. But search engine marketing is one way where people are already looking for a certain product and you appear either top of the search engine or as an advertisement that appears before they go to the links. So I say this, with social media, there's a lot of experimentation because it's so fluid and this algorithm is always changing. So the key thing is to test and test and test, right? Okay. All right, let's move on to, no worries, Joel, good question. I mean, I love the questions that I've been getting this past 9 weeks, right? So let's look at winning customers. Okay, now that you've created a splash, right? People are aware of your brand, right? Whether it's Elevate or whether it is Edabaran, right? Edabaran, Crystal's product or Moses' product, right? So now how do you convert them from people who are aware of it to people who are actually willing to transact and pay for your service, right? So now we're looking at winning customers. So in order to win customers, you have to have a good content strategy. So in developing your content strategy, there are no hard and fast rule. So, but there are some structure that you can use, right? Some framework that you can use to develop an ideal content ratio. So one of them is the rule of third, meaning that you divide your content. 1/3 of them will be to promote your business. 1/3 of them can be just sharing what other people are posting. And another thing is engaging directly with followers, right? So that can be one way of looking at it. Another rule is 80-20, where 80% can be thematic or content that are useful and interesting and something that get people to follow you because people don't always like to be sold something. And 20% of the time you remind them, by the way, I'm selling this product, would you be interested? This is the offer that we're having. This is the price of our product. This is how you can buy our product, right? So these are some two common guidelines that you can use in order to decide what content you want to use, you want to produce. Next is when, right? How frequent am I going to post? Whenever you're posting, look for quality over quantity. That's how social media is. It's a very visual and creative space, right? So you want to always focus on quality over quantity. And then look at the platform. Like Twitter, you can post a lot of posts a day. Instagram and Facebook may require less because sometimes there is content lethargy or where when you post too often, people might unfollow you or mute you, right? So you want to be watchful of that, right? Some days are more, you may receive more engagement than other days. It depends on the brand. Some brands get more interest and attention on weekends. Some might get interest on the mid of the week. Some who are maybe maybe involved in entertainment. Maybe they are more at the end of their workday, perhaps, right? Or maybe work-related, you're selling productivity tools and all that. Maybe early morning is good, right? So create a calendar to plan the content around specific events and milestones. There are a lot of templates online, but you can use something as easy as a Google Calendar or even Excel just to plan your content, right? You can plan, for example, early on, like you're going to make Hari Raya wishes or Christmas wishes or Chinese New Year wishes or Hari Gawai wishes, right? Harvest Festival wishes. So you can actually start to produce that content early on so that you can batch them and focus on a more current content the rest of the time, right? So that will allow you to be engaging with your customer consistently. So we're going to have a bit of fun. We're going to look at 9 quick ideas of what you can post, right? Because as I mentioned earlier, you need diversity. You don't want to post the same thing each time. It's like a standard picture and some words, right? Or inspiration quotes. Let's see how you can mix it up a little bit, right? So number 1, first, as I mentioned, you need to promote your business. So don't forget that at the end of the day, you are still selling furniture, you are still selling shirts or fashion article or fashions, you are still selling food or beverages. So from time to time, 1/3 of the time, for example, as suggested by the rule of thirds, post about your product, right? Next, this is always good, is give you credibility. Post about people that are happy about your product, right? Some testimonials are very good, can be on video, can be a picture, can be a repost of what other people are posting. So these are quick and easy as well, but can be long and less easy if you are looking to make your own production of it, right? Like videos. Third, provide thought leadership. So you can cite industry. Did you know, right? That's one good way of doing it. Share relevant articles or news clips, right? Just by posting it shows that you are tuned in on what the larger discussions are, and link to a blog post or video that you've created. I mentioned about YouTube. You can also link your social media pages to your website or your blog post on your website or on blog platform or other long form of writing like Medium and all that, right? Another one is you can ask questions, right? What is running to you, right? So our friends at Ultra ask people at Runners World to fill half in the blank, right? So people start giving feedback on what is running to them, right? For me, I think running is a good way to escape, I think, the work side of life, I think, right? So yeah. So maybe other people might say some other things. Running for them is about fitness. Running to them is about maybe social, right? Maybe, right? Or maybe like cycling now, right? Maybe cycling, it's competing. How far did you cycle today? A lot of people are into cycling. I'm sure some of you on this class today are into cycling as well. All right, this is actually one of the post idea that I quite like. I did this a lot last time when I was managing global brands. We do a lot of contests, right? So we create simple contests, just a coupon or it doesn't have to be expensive gifts. It can be like a reward, like, you know, if you win, you get to have lunch with Seth, for example. You get to have lunch with Dennis, right? So it can be something as easy as that. Encourage people to share and tag when you run contests, and ask people to follow your account in order to win. That's a bit of a trick, actually, right? To get more followers. Not trick, but tip. Next, be surprising. From time to time, you can be surprising, like using memes, but within reason, right? Don't be so surprising that it's shocking or it actually a detriment to your brand, right? So you can use memes, industry joke, inside jokes that some of your customer may understand, right? But don't do this so often, because sometimes, not sometimes, you still want to maintain some level of professionalism, right? And I think if you do it all the time, it's no longer surprising. That's another reason why. There's another way as well that I think that you can do. Take them behind the scenes. If you are like running a coffee shop or you're running an ice cream shop, right? Show them how it is done. So that's one way of doing this. I think I've seen this in the past being done by some of our Shell Hawaii winners, right? Where they show them how things are made, right? So this is quite cool as well, I think. Sneak peek, right? Behind the scene. Next, look at the specific platform, what functions and features they have, whether you can geotag location, play with hashtags, right? Partner with influencers, right, for example, right? Or tag a few influencers for them to maybe reshare your post, right? So look at that, explore that, right? And lastly, you can go live, right? Live can be quite fun, actually, because you know, especially with tools like Instagram, right? I think you can do clever graphics and show that you are like somewhere on that day, right? So maybe you can do this, for example, once a month, right? We are live, especially when something is happening with your product or along with your products and services. So beside those tips, there are some other uses of social media. One thing is to get feedback from customer, share urgent news, as the examples show here. For example, you're closed today because of some celebration or because of some maybe road closure or something. Then you can use social media to let people know that you're not open today, but they can still order on Grab or on Foodpanda, for example, right? Another function that I quite like with social media is it's easier for business owners to get staff, to hire people. You can post them in groups, so just get people to share, and getting talents has never been easier, I think, thanks to social media, right? Even more so on Facebook compared to LinkedIn, right? So with writing for social media, you want to use a more casual tone. Don't be so professional unless it is platform like LinkedIn. Try to be positive. People don't like Eeyore, right? Or quite sour, dour person, right? Include a call to action. Tell people what is it that you want from them or what they can do. That way, the content become more engaging. Keep it short and simple. Remember TLDR, right? Make your content personal. Do your research. Check spelling and grammar. That's very important, right? Don't rush into posting something. Have a reader edit it, and make sure that you get your content neat and clean and reflective of the professionalism and excellence of your brand. I myself, personally, I use software like Grammarly to check my grammar, right? Just to check whether I'm not making any careless mistakes, right? And the last thing about this section is social media is a very visual element. Use a lot of video, use a lot of images. Invest in photographer. If you can't invest in photographer, invest in stock images. Look for free stock images if you don't want to invest at all, right? Look at bright colors and simple design, consistent to your brand, right? Look at typography and icons, right? Make sure that your texts are legible. People can read. The contrast between the image and visuals are there. You can explore infographics as well. Use GIFs and videos. Keep video short, and you can use captions, right? So here we have some examples. If on my bottom right-hand side, you can see Airbnb, right? The photos are amazing. Even if I don't use Airbnb, I would like to follow them just to get the inspiration from the photos. On the top right-hand corner, you have Harvard Business Review posts. You think Harvard Business Review is quite a serious magazine, but if you look at the Instagram, right, it reflects otherwise. They uses quite provocative and challenging photos that pulls you in, right? So this is another post that happened, I think, sometime not that long ago, on innovation that people are doing using banana leaf to wrap vegetables, right? So visual elements, remember, with your social media, pictures over words, right? Videos over words. Right? All right. So before we move along to the third and last chapter, before we go to the final thoughts, let's look at the questions that some of you have posted, right? Okay. When for FB, when the post or photo getting a lot of like, but it doesn't mean business or product is really happening in reality. How do we make it more effective? Okay, Zikyang Te, one way is to make sure that there's a call to action. I think like and comments are good, especially if they are organic, but what you want to see next is what we call click-through, right? The word is click and through, meaning that people click on a link and actually go and be able to purchase the product or make an inquiry about it or sign up for something, right? So that's one way to see that people are not just engaging with your brand and the surface, but also going deeper into being interested in your product. So like doesn't always mean customer, but like is, I think, can be what we call a vanity metrics. That's a good question. The word vanity is VANITE, meaning it doesn't really reflect the business side of things. But click-through reflects more. But at the same time, you have to look at your strategy as an omni-channel. Omni-channel means that when people are deciding, they're not deciding on your Facebook post alone. They might check your Instagram, they might check your website. So it's important to also look at the bigger picture of social media as a strategy to win your customer, right? It's similar if you want to use a military analogy, right? You can't win just with your army. You need your navies, you need your air force, you need your special forces. So the same with social media as well, right? Okay. One Razi mentioned on the day where Delhi. Okay, the way you can get the stats, if I understand your question correctly, Wam Razi, is to use your Facebook analytics. There are data there, especially if you're using your brand page, not your individual page. then the data actually show you which posts are most popular, how have your likes and followers grow from one point in time to another point in time. So all the data are there already. But if you are looking at industry data, I suggest that I'll post it on our group later. But you can look at data like from Hootsuite, We Are Social. So they produce data from year to year on, are people using mobile, are people using desktop, or are people using Facebook, Instagram, and all that. Those are more on the environment industry level, but specifically for your brand, if you are a business page, normally it comes with some functions which allow you to look at the data, right? Okay, excellent question, guys. Keep them coming. All right, now we're gonna look at how do you keep customers, right? Those creative posts also help you to keep customers, also help you to help customers select your brand, select or opt in to follow your brands. So now we're gonna look at deeper at keeping customers, because when you have customers, they will be happy, they will be unhappy, some of them will be neutral. So how do you engage and make sure that you stay on top and win when it comes to keeping customers? So managing your account, make sure that you reply promptly, right? Have a rule. So I think here it suggests that within 48 hours is a good goal for small businesses. I would go even as far as to engage within 24 hours. I mentioned earlier just now, some people might be asking, are you open today? So responding 48 hours later might not be useful for them, right? So, but obviously, it may be tempting to respond immediately, but you may end up just doing your social media and not managing other aspects of your business if you are doing that, especially when you're just starting out and you don't have a manager or a staff managing your social media. So I think 48, 24 hours is a reasonable time period. Schedule a time where you check and respond your social media account, especially if you're doing it yourself. Avoid responding instantly, because otherwise sometimes it can be overwhelming, right? Especially once you start having hundreds of people expecting your responses. So maybe batching them would be more efficient use of your time, right? Okay, you are less likely to make mistakes and poor choices if you're distracted. Putting dedicated time to respond to your customer questions or requests. I think if you have a dedicated time, then you are more calm and you know that you're focused on answering social media rather than focusing on doing other things like business development or operations and trying to juggle the three within the same time, right? With content, I think one way to save time is to plan ahead, right? If you have some free time, plan all the festive posts that you want to post, plan the product posts that you want to post. So these actually help you to sort of like save time so it doesn't become so overwhelming, right? It's important to commit when you're managing your social media. Oh, there's a graphic there. All right. Doing a social media calendar, I think a lot of time you can plan it from week to week or day to day even. I mentioned you can even create a new tab on your Google Calendar called social media. And from there, you can untick and tick them. So Google Calendar is fantastic, right, guys? And then you can use your Excel as well and to manage your social media. But if you are like, you decide to upgrade yourself, I in the past have used software application called Hootsuite. So that's actually a social media application designed specifically to manage social media. On Hootsuite, you can see all your social media, Instagram, Facebook, you name it, right? And you can actually have a calendar to plan. But it is a paid service. If I'm not mistaken, don't quote me on this because I haven't been using them for a while. It's about 400 ringgit a month, I think. It's quite expensive. But if you are generating tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, it can be a worthwhile investment, right? So when are the big moments on social media? For some of you, I encourage you, the Singles Day, 11/11 is coming soon. Are your business planning to do any promotion on this, right? So I'm talking to you, Edabaran, Thurs, Norazita, all your products that are facing customer, right? Are you doing something for 11/11, right? Maybe, right? Other big moments are festive seasons, as I mentioned, or specific timeline, right? In Sarawak, not this year, but hopefully next year, there is the Rainforest Festival. So you want to capture the excitement, the conversation, all the hashtags and things trending, happening around it, and you want to be part of that. So you can plan like July, June, I'm going to do something on the Rainforest Festival, right? So you can create campaigns, whether it's within a month or quarter, right? You can plan, right? This month I'm going to do this brand, this month I'm going to do this campaign, this month I'm going to push this product. When I was managing social media, digital marketing, actually, just as a whole, for a telco company, it's one of the largest telco companies in Malaysia. We actually make sure that every month we promote something. So this month we promote roaming. Next month we promote maybe Valentine's Day, or next month we promote something else like Super Savers or something, right? Okay, and prepare things in advance. This helps you. I think batching, I can't emphasize this enough, is a very productive way of doing things, right? And be inclusive, right? I think here what I mean by be inclusive is make sure that I think you open a wide net in terms of your content, right? Don't just focus on one segment of the group and all that, because I think customers, I mean, at the end of the day, it's to your benefit to get as many people as possible to use your product, right? I think nowadays as well, with the Black Lives Matter and all that, we are becoming more united and all that. So I think we want to project and reflect that as well. All right, this is very important. Addressing negative feedback. Sometimes there are people, maybe they're having a bad day, or maybe there's just a oversight in terms of quality control, right? So addressing negative feedback is a very key, important aspect in managing your social media. So ask yourself, should I respond, right? Sometimes there are just people trolling you. If you need to respond, do so promptly, be helpful and transparent, never know negative, never go on the attack and attack them back, right? Tell them like, I don't need your money. You know, you shouldn't do that. I've seen some ridiculous engagement on social media where the business owner actually blames back the customer, right? So if you think it's abusive and all that, just delete them. But it's like a normal negative feedback. It's an opportunity for you to do your part in customer service, right? So here's an example. I'm going to ask this question, right? So this is a person commenting on Chobani yogurts, right? So they say that it tastes almost rancid. Sour taste is almost overwhelming. It didn't used to taste like this. Last time it was fresh, right? So what happened, right? So in this type of feedback, do you delete it or do you ignore it, right? What would you do? How would you respond to this? I mean, take a moment to think about it. Okay, I'm going to show you a very good way of this brand Chobani responded. In a casual voice, they mentioned, oh no, it sounds like one of our cups slipped past our quality control. Would you mind private messaging us to complete with the complete code on top of the lid, and we address so that we can investigate this and make things right for you, right? So I think they turn the comment into an opportunity for them to learn, right? Next, another one, right? This is for a hotel. Worst dive I have stayed in. Worst hotel service I've ever experienced in my entire life. Arrived early, told to move out car from the present position as a receptionist parked there. Got in at 4, be told the owner was trying to sell and had lost interest and should have ran then, but decided to make the best of the bad day. And boy, was the room a bad lot. I think the grammar is interesting there. West end of Glasgow was right as we're nearly sleeping in the street. Asked to move to be told they were full, and was his best joke of the day. Still being in an optimist state for 2 hours and left. All right. So somebody gave a one star rating on a dive place, I guess, or the hotel. So how would you respond to this? Really bad experience. So this is an example of how not to respond. The person actually complain back, right? Actually, how glad we are that they will not be returning. You see, this is not the way to respond to a customer, right? I think if you have nothing nice to say, better not say anything, right? So these guests also left a strange order in the room. You know what? Imagine if you were the person complaining and you got this person actually tried to 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 uh, turn the blame against you, right? Instead of apologizing or trying to make things better. Okay, so what if overall, in terms of keeping customers and winning customers, what if your strategy isn't working? Key thing with social media is it is evolving, it's always changing. So be patient, right? Try and try again, but try to learn fast, right? So try using other platforms. You can make sure that if you're adding value to your customer, normally, eventually, they might see some value in it. Or maybe do some investigation and research and learn what would be of value or of more value if what you're doing now does not seem to resonate to your customer. Look for patterns. I mentioned this earlier. What kind of posts are people engaging more with? Um, Consider your content, right? Is this the best way to sort of engage with customers online in a friendly and good way, right? And check whether there are any issues, right? Whether sometimes you see more engagement on desktop, but not so much on mobile, or more on mobile, less on desktop. Maybe there is a translation issue there in terms of how things appear on mobile and web platform. All right, guys. Any questions on customer feedback, on content? We're still getting people joining in. On social media, guys. I'm quite passionate about social media because it's something that I used to do professionally. So any questions, anything that you didn't understand or you think that you need further clarification, or you just want to share your own experience? All right. If no question, then we'll move on to the final thoughts. Social media, I understand many of you are just starting your business and you probably look at options where you can manage your social media on a shoestring, right? So before you decide to pay for social media or ads on social media, try to experiment first, see what works, so that once you start paying for ads, I think it's more optimized, right? Because you know that you're paying for something that meets your goals, right? Ultimately, right? All these platforms, as I mentioned earlier, provide free analytics, so use them, right? There are some free versions of external tools as well. There's tools that give freemium version where you can manage like limited to 1 or 3 platforms or 1 users only. So, but in the beginning, if you're looking at managing it as a shoestring, you can use the free analytics available, right? So this is an example of Twitter analytics. On the right-hand side, you have an example, I think, of the Facebook. No, this Twitter as well. Both are Twitter. So Twitter will tell you how many tweets have you done, how many mentioned, how many tweets impression, right? And so forth and so on. Facebook will have reach, will have engagement. If you're paying for your ads, they will show you how many of the engagements are organic and how many of them are paid, right? So you want to see, once you pay something, it actually takes its own life and actually generates organic engagements as well, right? So here are some tools that you can use for social media management. I mentioned Hootsuite. I haven't used others except for Google Alerts here. Google Alerts is good to see what is in discussion or what people are searching on Google. Hootsuite is a great tool for scheduling, monitoring. Right? I think here it says allow 3 social profiles, basic analytics if you're using the free account. So I would suggest after this class, you can check out some of these. And I can actually recommend Hootsuite for you to explore as well. Next, if you're looking to generate nice graphics, I've seen people who has like tens of thousands of followers and they just use Canva as their tool, right? So you don't necessarily need to be too fancy, or getting like professional paid version of softwares. I think the key thing is just to produce content that people resonate with and you're authentic, and I think those are more important than and with big ideas, those are more important than just getting a good tools but not using it the right way, right? So looking ahead, social media platforms are constantly evolving. So you never know, right? Before this, Facebook, MySpace was very popular. Now it's Facebook. Next thing you know, might be other platforms that are replacing them, right? So be aware. So audience behaviors, trends are always changing. Platform themselves update the algorithm. Engage, keep listening to your consumer, your customers, your followers, right? Keep up to trend with what's happening within your country, market, and your platform. Follow, search, and monitor hashtags. Subscribe to some newsletters. They're quite helpful. There are many of them online. And you can check out Hootsuite's quarterly reports. I mentioned just now about the trends, environment, market, industry trends. Hootsuite provide them, right? So with that, guys, is it possible for us to, as usual, take a group photo? Is it possible for you just to help me switch on your camera so we take a quick one before I take on the last questions? All right. Nice to see some friendly faces. Hold on, let me just allow everybody to switch on the camera. All right, I'm gonna snap now. I think some of you maybe haven't taken your showers or all right, fantastic. Are you all in Kuching or in Sarawak? Moses maybe in KL, I think. All right, I took a snap already. Oh yeah, Joel. Joel is a friend of Haziq, right? All right, so let's take up some questions. Maybe we take about 5 minutes. Sorry, guys, a bit long today.
So can I ask?
Yes, now.
In this social media, right? When you created a platform in social media and Facebook, Instagram, how are you going to move them to an app when you have developed an app? I mean, like, to change.
Can you repeat that? No, I'm sorry, didn't quite hear you.
It's like currently you start a business in social media, then you deal with them in Facebook or maybe in Instagram. But in future you have an app. How are you going to switch them to use the?
I think the key thing is sometimes there's no sort of direct transition. So what you need to do is once you develop your app, then you need to encourage them using social media to sort of like introduce your app to them. So that's where with social, right, it is like real life conversation as well. For example, before this, if you are running from a kiosk, right, if you look at the physical setting and you open your own cafe, for example, then it is about engaging the customer and telling them that now you are available on App Store or on Google Play or Android. So I think that's one quick way of doing it. I think the key thing is also to use many platforms. Like I say, social media is just one aspect of the broader digital marketing. I think one good way to engage with customers is to have like to send out newsletters. they need to sign up for this or get permission for you to send it to them. So that's another way where you can communicate with them and tell them on social media, because they may not be tracking your social media all the time, but more often than not, if it doesn't go to spam or doesn't go into organized into not your main inbox, then you can also use that as a mean for you to tell people that, hey, you know, we love to serve you better. That's why we have started our own app, and you can still enjoy and get more features through our app. Does it help now?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. But there is an advantage of having an app, but at the same time, bear in mind that maybe what you need is a web app, not an app, because not everybody interacts with all their apps, but people do interact with Chrome or with Safari or the Facebook, right? So those may be more convenient interaction, right? Rather than you develop an app and people might not download it even, right? So, but if your product is really engaging and it's quite useful, like if it's a food delivery service or it's a you know, it provides some value that people are willing to consider that as one of the frequently used apps, then there can be a strategy. But I've seen a lot of businesses putting attention on web apps or web pages because of that, right?
Thanks.
No worries. Okay, Dennis is asking here, closing a sales in social media, do you have any advice? I think in terms of closing a sale, if you're asking B2C, is quite convenient with an online, if you can, if it's an online e-commerce thing, but meaning that you can just get them from social media straight to your product page, and then they can make the purchase through the checkout and all the subsequent pages and payments and all that. With B2B, probably I've seen where people can go from a social media to a landing page, or even the social media themselves, where they can actually inquire about your product. Sometimes even the messaging box on Facebook can be quite useful on getting your sales funnel towards the purchase. So that's something that you can do as well. The other one is for people to just leave their contact, and then you can contact them for subsequent consultative selling if you are doing a B2B business. Right, Dennis? But definitely, it can be a tool for sales, and social media can be part of that funnel, right? It can be at the beginning of the funnel, and at the closure part can be your website, or can be you making the call, or even by email if they're asking for a quotation or an invoice, right? All right. Since LinkedIn, this is from Seth, launched a story feature yesterday. Perhaps how should we sell ourselves, our brand, there differently from FB and IG? I would think this is Seth's question. Looking at, hold on, let me just. Okay. Looking at LinkedIn, the difference may be that the content could be a little bit more professional, right? Maybe if you look at the 9 suggestions that we did, perhaps a contest may not be relevant or suitable for LinkedIn, or even on the story, or like a trendy dance or something, it may not be relevant for LinkedIn. But if you are doing short videos on advice, or if you're doing thought leadership, maybe the story can be relevant for LinkedIn, or even showing behind the scenes. You know, we are preparing for this one big event. Our team are working hard. Boom, right? It can be a LinkedIn type of story feature, right? So I think it's important to see the voice of the thing. Like for example, if you do like a very nice visual post for Facebook, there's some data saying that the post lasts about 5 hours. So if you invested like many days on a post that you can't use in the future, it may not be suitable for Facebook, but that would work very well for Instagram, for example. All right. So again, there are these nuances, there are these characteristics of the different mediums that we want to watch out for, right? All right, guys. We're still having participants coming in. Huh? How come they know that we are still having class at 12:21? All right. Any further question, guys? I am quite excited about this topic, as you can see. Tomorrow we will have our pitching class. And for that pitching class, it's very important. I hope everybody can make it. Why? Because I will give you a sample deck for you to put in all the key things that we have learned and make them into a logical sequence of presentation that you can use for your business. And also it helps us to deliberate when we are choosing who are selected as the winners of Shell Life Wired for this year. All right, guys. With that, I thank you so much. I wish you guys all the best for the rest of today. All right, guys. Thank you.